I turned 65 on a Thursday in late October, the kind of evening where the wind off Lake Erie still carries a bite, even through the closed windows of the VFW Hall in Parma. 80 people packed the place. Folding chairs scraped linoleum. Somebody's cousin had strung Christmas lights, even though Halloween hadn't passed yet. And the smell of sheet cake and percolated under the cigarette ghosts that never quite leave those walls. I stood near the head table in the same navy blazer I'd worn to my daughter's college graduation, sleeves a little short now because my shoulders had rounded some over the decades. Catherine had planned everything, she told me that morning while she curled her hair in the bathroom mirror. A night you'll never forget, Daniel, she said, smiling at her own reflection more than at me. I believed her. They sang Happy Birthday off key, but loud. My son Nathan held his phone up to record, grinning like a kid who'd just been handed the keys to something shiny. My daughter Lauren stood beside him, 34 years old and still wearing the same proud smirk she'd perfected in high school when she told people her father was just a teacher. Catherine stood front and center, arms wide like a game show hostess, wearing the red dress she bought for somebody else's wedding 2 summers ago. 80 voices died down. The last candle flickered out. That's when she stepped forward with the manila envelope. The room hushed the way it does when a principal walks into a noisy cafeteria. You feel it in your stomach before you hear it. Daniel, she said, voice pitched just loud enough for the back row. There's never a perfect time for hard truths, but tonight feels right. She handed me the envelope like it was a gift. Happy birthday, honey, and happy freedom. I knew what was inside before I slid my thumb under the flap. I'd seen the draft on her desk 3 weeks earlier when she thought I was at the grocery store. Dissolution of marriage, state of Ohio, no fault. She'd highlighted the parts about equitable distribution in yellow. People shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. My old department chair, Ruth Ann, looked like she'd swallowed a moth. I opened it anyway. 14 pages, her signature already dry and perfect at the bottom. A blank line waiting for mine. Catherine kept talking, soft, rehearsed, the voice she used for the parent-teacher conferences when a kid was failing. 42 years is a long time to carry someone who never quite... Rose, I think we both deserve to stop pretending. Nathan gave a small nod, like he was agreeing with the diagnosis. Lauren actually smiled. A real one, teeth and all. I looked out at the faces. Some neighbors I'd coached the Little League with. The janitor from Jefferson High who used to sneak me coffee during study hall duty. Firefighter families I'd written college recommendation letters for after their dads didn't come home from shifts. They all looked uncomfortable, but not one of them looked surprised. They'd heard the stories for years. Daniel Boone, that was me, the man who peaked at Teacher of the Year in 1998 and then coasted. The man who never left the classroom, never made administration, never bought the bigger house on the west side. The man whose wife had to work part-time at the library because we couldn't afford for her not to. I pulled the Montblanc pen from my inside pocket, the one the senior class gave me in 2013, the year of the fire, the one engraved Mr. Boone, for Lives You Lit. I clicked it once. The sound cracked like a starter pistol. Catherine's chin lifted, triumphant, waiting for the tears or the shouting or the begging. None came. I signed my name slow, the same way I used to sign report cards, pressing hard enough that the ink bled a little on the second copy. Daniel J. Boone, October 26th, 2025. I handed the papers back. Thank you, Kathy, I said. My voice didn't shake. I'd practiced that part in the shower for months. This is thoughtful. A nervous laugh rippled somewhere in the middle tables. She blinked. Daniel! But I wasn't done. I turned to the room, palms open like I was about to start a lesson on the causes of the Great Depression. Folks, I said, I know tonight's taken a turn. I'm sorry for that. But since we're all here, and since my wife just gave me the kindest gift anyone's handed me in years, I'd like to give something back. Catherine, Nathan, Lauren, come on up here with me. They hesitated. I waited, the same way I used to wait out a 16-year-old who swore he didn't copy homework. They came. We stood in a crooked little line in front of the sheet cake that said, Happy 65th. Dan the man in blue icing, I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a single folded sheet of paper. Not legal size, just printer paper, creased from writing close to my heart all week. This, I said, holding it up, is the last will and testament I filed with my attorney in March of 2015. 10 years ago, almost to the day. Catherine frowned. She hated when I brought up dates she couldn't immediately place. Most of you know 2013 was a hard year. Structure fire on Clark Avenue. 3 firefighters didn't make it. 2 of them had kids in my history classes. Good boys, smart. One wanted to be a paramedic. The other wanted to play Division I baseball. I paused long enough for the memory to settle on the room like dust. Those funerals wrecked me. I kept thinking, what happens to those kids now? Who pays for college when the hero pension barely covers the mortgage? I unfolded the paper. So I did what any rational man does when he realizes his own family thinks he's worthless. I fixed the only thing I could still fix. Catherine's face changed. Not anger yet. Confusion. In 2015, I went on, I transferred every asset I had that wasn't tied up in this house or me, teacher pension, into an irrevocable charitable remainder trust. The lake cabin in Geneva on the lake, gone. The brokerage account Kathy always called, barely 5 figures, gone. The life insurance policy with her name on it as beneficiary, gone. Whole life, universal, whatever they call it, all of it. Total value at the time, $4.7 million. The room made a sound I can only describe as a gasp that forgot how to finish. Nathan actually took a step back like I'd swung at him. Every penny, I said, now funds college scholarships for children of fallen first responders in northern Ohio. As of this morning, the Brothers Keeper Trust has put 43 kids through school. Doctors, nurses, teachers, 2 firefighters so far. More in the pipeline. I looked at Catherine. Her mouth was open, but nothing came out. You filed for half of what you thought we had, I told her gently. Turns out we've got the house, worth maybe $110 after the mortgage, and my TRS pension, about $38,000 a year before taxes. That's it. The rest has been gone for 10 years. Irrevocable means even I can't touch it now. Lauren made a noise like a kicked dog. I turned back to the room. So Kathy gets the house equity, $55,000 maybe. She gets half the checking account, $4,000 and change, and she gets to keep the 2020 CRV. I kept driving the 2012 Accord with the rust spots because I liked it. Somebody in the back row started clapping slow, then stopped, unsure. Catherine finally found her voice. You're lying. Call Tom Halverson at Halverson & Associates tomorrow, I said. He'll send over the trust documents. He's been waiting for this day longer than I have. I faced my children. Nathan, you told me last Christmas I'd never built anything that lasted. Lauren, you posted that meme about how your parents' generation chose comfort over greatness. Well, I built something, just not for you. I folded the will copy and slipped it back in my pocket. I'm going to cut the cake now, I said to the room. There's plenty. Chocolate with the custard filling from Becker's Bakery. Kathy picked it out herself. I stepped down off the little riser. People parted like I was Moses, and they weren't sure which side of the Red Sea they belonged on. Ruth Ann was crying quietly into a napkin. The firefighter widow, Maria D'Angelo, walked straight up to me and hugged me so hard my ribs creaked. Behind me, I heard Catherine say my name once, sharp, like a command. I kept walking. At the cake table, I picked up the knife. My hand didn't shake. I cut the first square, slid it onto a paper plate, and handed it to Mrs. D'Angelo. Chocolate was always Tommy's favorite, she whispered. I remember, I said, and for the first time in 42 years, the weight on my chest felt like it belonged to someone else. I was born in 1960 in a little brick house on the south side of Youngstown, the year the mills still roared like dragons, and every man on our street smelled of sulfur and coffee by 6 a.m. My father came home black with mill dust, kissed my mother on the cheek, and left a perfect smudge on her skin like a fingerprint from another planet. He never once complained about the work. He just said, "Somebody's got to keep the steel coming, Danny. Might as well be a boon." I was never going to be a mill guy. I knew it the first time I walked into Mr. Covell's 8th grade history class, and he started talking about Thermopylae like the Spartans were still bleeding on that pass. I felt it in my bones. I wanted to stand in front of kids and make the past feel close enough to touch. My old man didn't understand it, but he shook my hand the day I told him I was going to Kent State for teaching. "Long as you work hard, son, that's all I ever cared about." I met Catherine Mary Russo in the fall of 1981 at a mixer in the Kent Student Center. She was 20, dark-haired, laughing loud with her sorority sisters, wearing a red sweater that made the whole room look colder around her. I was 21, wearing the only blazer I owned, the one with the patches on the color of dried mustard. I told her my name was Daniel Boone, no relation, and she laughed like I'd invented the joke just for her. 3 months later, she let me hold her hand walking across the snowy commons, while the Christmas lights blinked red and green on front campus. I thought that was the luckiest man alive. We married in June of 1983 in St. Columba's Cathedral. Her father, a foreman at Republic Steel, paid for the reception at the Croatian Hall. My father gave us $500 in a white envelope and told me, "Don't spend it on furniture. Buy something that lasts." We bought a 1978 Cutlass Supreme instead. Drove it to Niagara Falls for our honeymoon with the windows down and Springsteen on the tape deck. She laid her head on my shoulder at the edge of the falls and said, "We're going to have such a beautiful life, Danny." I believed her. First teaching job was at Cheney High in Youngstown, 1984. 23 years old, standing in front of 35 sophomores who looked at me like I was barely older than they were. I taught them about the American Revolution and the New Deal and the day the mills started closing. Some of those kids had fathers who hadn't worked in 2 years. I learned real quick that history isn't just dates. It's hunger. It's pride. It's the way a man's shoulders sag when the gates lock behind him for good. Catherine worked as a secretary at the Board of Education downtown. We rented the top half of a duplex on the west side, saved every penny, and in 1987 we bought our little ranch on Redfern Drive in Parma for $58,000. It had pink aluminum siding and a maple tree in the front yard that dropped helicopters every spring. Nathan came in 87, Lauren in 91. Life felt sturdy. Not flashy, sturdy. By the mid-90s, I was head of the social studies department at Jefferson High. Catherine had quit to stay home with the kids, then went back part-time when Lauren started kindergarten. We weren't rich, but the mortgage got paid, the kids had braces, and every summer we loaded the Cutlass, and later the minivan, and drove to the lake cabin her uncle left her in the will. Geneva, on the lake, cedar shingles, creaky dock, the kind of place you can smell the water before you see it. Those were the good years. I can still close my eyes and hear Nathan and Lauren screaming as they jumped off that dock into water, so cold it hurt your teeth. The first crack showed up in 2002. I came home early from a field trip to the Federal Reserve in Cleveland and found Catherine on the phone in the kitchen, voice low and sweet in a way she hadn't used with me in years. She hung up fast when she saw me. "It was just Denise from the library," she said. I nodded like I believed her. 2 weeks later, I saw the credit card statement. Dinner at Giovanni's. Flowers from Romano's. A motel out by the turnpike. I sat in the high school parking lot after the last bell and stared at those charges until the numbers blurred. When I got home, she was making meatloaf, humming along to the radio. I never asked. I told myself a man who loves his children keeps the house standing, even if the foundation is cracked. I told myself a lot of things. Instead of confronting her, I started staying late at school, grading papers that didn't need grading, coaching academic challenge, volunteering for every committee work nobody wanted, anything to keep from going home to that humming. The affair fizzled on its own. Whoever he was, he moved on. Catherine never knew I knew. But something calcified in me that year. I started keeping a separate savings account at a credit union she didn't know existed. I started reading books about trusts and estates during my plan period instead of the sports page. I told myself it was just prudence. A good teacher plans ahead. Then came 2013. February 14th, Valentine's Day, structure fire in a triple-decker on Clark Avenue. 3 firefighters went in after a report of kids trapped on the 3rd floor. The roof came down, all 3 lost. 2 of them, Tommy D'Angelo and Marcus Washington, had little brothers in my junior U.S. history class. I sat in the back of St. Columba's again, this time for funerals, watching 2 teenage boys in rented black suits try to be men while their mothers fell apart in the front pew. I went home that night and poured myself a bourbon I didn't drink. Catherine was at book club. The house was quiet. I opened the filing cabinet where we kept the life insurance policies, deeds, statements. I looked at the lake cabin title, the brokerage account that had crept up to almost $2 million during the Obama bull market, the whole life policy worth another $1.5 million, and I felt something I hadn't felt since the motel charges. Pure, cold clarity. I called Tom Halvorsen the next morning. He'd been a student of mine in 1994, went on to law school, still sent me a Christmas card every year with pictures of his own kids. "Mr. Boone," he said, "you taught me that real courage is doing the right thing when nobody's watching. What can I do for you?" I told him I wanted to give everything away. Not someday, now, irrevocably. He tried to talk me out of it for 3 appointments. On the 4th, he brought in an estate planning specialist from Cleveland, and we built the Brothers Keeper Trust. By March of 2015, every asset that wasn't the house on Redfern Drive or my teacher pension was gone from my name, transferred into a charitable remainder unit trust that would pay me a modest income until I died, then pour every remaining dollar into scholarships for kids who lost firefighter and police parents. Catherine signed the paperwork without reading it. "Whatever you think is best, honey," she said, barely looking up from her phone. She thought it was about taxes. I never told a soul. Not my brother in Florida. Not my best friend Ray, who teaches physics across the hall. I kept teaching, kept mowing the lawn, kept driving the same rusty Accord, and every year on the anniversary of the Clark Avenue fire, I drove to the cemetery with 2 bouquets and stood between Tommy's and Marcus's stones until the wind off the lake went right through my coat. The kids grew up believing their mother's quiet gospel. Dad's a good man, but he never tried for anything bigger. Dad's content with mediocrity. Dad's the reason we can't have the life we deserve. They said it to my face, eventually. Nathan at Thanksgiving 2019. "You could have been a principal by now, Dad, or a superintendent. You just stopped." Lauren on a podcast she thought I'd never hear. My parents sacrificed so I could have opportunities. But honestly, my dad chose comfort over ambition, and it limited all of us. I smiled and passed the mashed potatoes. I'd stopped correcting people a long time ago. Catherine started tennis lessons in 2022, came home flushed and laughing in new white skirts, started talking about finding herself at 61, started staying out late for book club again. I saw the charge for the country club membership on the joint card. I said nothing, because by then I understood something they never did. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's just the sound a man makes while he's moving every piece on the board while nobody's looking. And tonight, 42 years after that red sweater at Kent State, 80 people just watched the last piece slide into place. I finished cutting the cake. Maria D'Angelo took her plate with tears still drying on her cheeks and whispered, "Tommy would have been so proud of you, Mr. Boone." I nodded, throat thick. Behind me, I heard Nathan say, voice cracking, "Dad, $4.7 million? You gave away $4.7 million?" I turned around slow. No, son, I said. I gave it forward. There's a difference. Then I took my own piece of cake, sat down at a table with the widows and orphans and firefighters who made it home, and ate every bite while the rest of the room tried to figure out what the hell had just happened to their version of my life. The year everything quietly cracked open was 2008, the same year the stock market bled out on live television, and half the houses on our street went up for sale overnight. I was 48, still thought I had time to fix things. I learned different. It started with a smell I didn't recognize on Catherine's coat when she came in from girls' night at the wine bar on Ridge Road. Not wine, something sharper. Expensive cologne, the kind a man wears when he wants a woman to notice he's wearing it. I was sitting at the kitchen table grading essays about the causes of the Great Depression. She kissed the top of my head like always, quick and dry, and said she was exhausted. I watched her walk down the hallway in the new boots I hadn't seen before. Black leather, low heel, the kind that make a woman's legs look like they belong to someone younger. I told myself I was being ridiculous. But I started paying attention. Little things first. A new email address she logged out of the second I walked into the room. A sudden interest in running. She bought neon shoes and left the house at 6:30 on Saturday mornings, when she used to sleep until 10. A text message that lit up her phone while she was in the shower. Can't stop thinking about Thursday. Same time. I read it through the steam on the mirror. She had the phone face down on the bathroom counter. I told myself it was probably Denise from the library again. Then came the November parent-teacher conferences. I was stuck at school until 9 cleaning up cookie crumbs and telling Mrs. Kowalski her son needed to stop drawing swastikas in the margins of his notes. Catherine had said she'd be home by 7. I pulled into the driveway at 9:30 and her car wasn't there. I sat in the dark living room with the television off and waited. At 11:15, the garage door rumbled. She came in flushed, hair messy in a way that wasn't from wind, laughing at something someone said in the car that dropped her off. Headlights swept across the curtains and disappeared. "Where were you?" I asked. Voice calm, teacher voice. She jumped anyway. "Oh my God, Danny, you scared me." Denise's husband surprised us with a limo for her birthday. We went downtown. She smelled like that cologne again, and something else. Sex and cold night air. I nodded. "Must have been some limo," I said. "Left a hell of a lipstick smudge on your neck." She touched the spot without thinking, then laughed too loud. It's just wine. We were silly." I let it go. Because Nathan was 21, away at Ohio State. Lauren was 17, upstairs pretending to study for the ACT while texting boys. I told myself marriages have rough patches. I told myself a man who loves his children keeps the house warm even when the furnace is broken. But I started keeping receipts. In December, I found the hotel key card in the pocket of her wool coat when I took it to the dry cleaner. Hilton Garden Inn, Strongsville. Room 412. Date on the sleeve. November 13th, the night of conferences. I drove out there the next day after school, asked the front desk girl if they kept records. She was maybe 19, still had acne and kindness in her eyes, told me privacy laws, but when I slid my teacher ID across the counter and said, "I just need to know if my wife was here," she looked at the name and softened. "Mr. Boone? You had my brother in 10th grade? I'm not supposed to, but..." "Yeah." She checked in with a man, paid cash. I thanked her and left before I threw up in the lobby. His name was Richard Harlan, principal at Valley Forge High School, married, 2 kids, golf handicap in the single digits, and a reputation for mentoring young teachers, especially the pretty ones. I knew because I looked him up in the staff directory. Picture showed a man with a tan year-round and teeth too white for Northeast Ohio winters. I sat in my classroom after that, door locked, lights off, and stared at the periodic table Ray keeps taped to the wall between our rooms. I thought about marching into Harlan's office and breaking his nose with the brass apple the class of '99 gave me. I thought about telling his wife. I thought about packing a bag and driving until the lake wasn't on my left anymore. Instead, I went home and made spaghetti. Catherine came in from her volunteer meeting at the library and kissed me on the cheek, like nothing had ever happened. That night, I lay awake beside her and listened to her breathe, wondering how long a man can love a stranger who wears his wife's skin. January 2009. The market bottomed out. Our brokerage account lost 42% in 6 months. Catherine cried at the kitchen table over the statements. How are we ever going to retire, Danny? We're going to be 70 and still eating canned tuna. I almost laughed, because I was already planning something bigger than retirement. I started meeting with Tom Halverson on Saturday mornings. Told Catherine I was helping coach Academic Challenge at the middle school. Tom was 29 then, fresh out of Cleveland Marshall, still had the eager look kids get when they think justice is a real thing you can hold in your hand. I laid it all out. Cabin, investments, life insurance, pension survivor benefits, everything that wasn't joint. I wanted it gone from her reach before she ever knew it existed. Tom kept asking if I was sure. I was surer than I'd ever been of anything. We spent 3 years structuring it so it would survive any divorce settlement Ohio could throw at it. Separate property, funded with post-marriage earnings that were never commingled, irrevocable. By 2012, the paperwork was ready. I just needed a reason big enough to pull the trigger. The reason came Valentine's Day 2013, when the roof fell on Tommy D'Angelo and Marcus Washington. After the funerals, I called Tom and said, "Do it, all of it, now." March 14th, 2013, I signed the last page in his little office above the bakery in Parma. Smelled like fresh rye bread the whole time. Tom witnessed it. His paralegal witnessed it. Then we walked across the street to the credit union, and I wired everything, lake cabin deed, brokerage, insurance cash value, into the Brothers Keeper Trust. $4.7 million left my name that afternoon and never came back. Catherine was at Pilates. She came home and asked why I looked so calm. I told her I'd had a good day at school. She believed me. The affair with Harlan ended sometime that spring. I know because the cologne stopped coming home on her coat, and she started baking again. Banana bread, the kind she only makes when she's trying to feel like a good person. She never knew I knew, and I never told her what I'd done with the money she thought we still had. I kept teaching, kept coaching, kept smiling at parent-teacher nights while Harlan shook my hand and asked how Lauren was doing in AP Psych, kept driving the same car, wearing the same blazer, letting the narrative harden around me like ice on the lake in January. Daniel Boone, nice guy, decent teacher, never going to be more than that. Nathan graduated college in 2010 with a business degree, and a sneer he didn't have at 18. Lauren started posting pictures from spring break in Cancun's sophomore year, with captions about finally living the life I deserve. Both of them started calling the lake cabin Mom's family place, like I'd never fixed the dock or patched the roof every summer of their childhood. I let them, because every dollar they assumed would be there someday was already paying tuition for kids who needed it more than they ever had. Every memory they took for granted at that cabin was already owned by a trust that would outlive us all. And every night I came home to a woman who had betrayed me once and would do it again. I slept like a man who had finally stopped carrying water in a bucket with no bottom. I just waited. 17 years from the first lipstick smudge on her neck to the night she handed me divorce papers over chocolate cake. 17 years of silence that looked like surrender but was really reconnaissance. The house on Redfern Drive got quieter. The lake stopped being ours. The money disappeared without a sound. The cabin sat on a gravel road 2 miles past the strip of arcades and wineries in Geneva-on-the-Lake. The kind of place people only find if somebody tells them it's there. Cedar shingles gone silver, green tin roof, screen porch that sagged in the middle like an old dog's back. We bought it in 1996 from Catherine's Uncle Vito for $48,000 and a promise to keep the family that we'd never sell it outside the bloodline. I loved that place more than the house we lived in every day. It smelled like pine pitch and charcoal smoke and the particular must-of-life jackets that never quite dried out. Every July, the kids and I would drive up early on a Saturday, windows down, classic rock station blasting, and Catherine would follow, later with the groceries and the wine, complaining about how I never checked the tires. We'd stay 2 weeks. I'd teach Nathan how to split kindling with a maul, teach Lauren how to back a boat trailer down the ramp without jackknifing it. At night, we'd sit on the dock with a string of Christmas lights running off an extension cord and watch the lake turn the color of tarnished silver. By 2014, the cabin was worth $340,000 on a bad day. Zillow said $410 on a good one. Catherine still called it the cottage, like it was quaint instead of the single biggest asset we had left. The morning I gave it away started ordinary. April 12th, 2014. A Saturday with the kind of pale sunshine that makes you believe winter is finally finished lying to you. Catherine was in the kitchen drinking coffee and scrolling real estate listings on her iPad. She'd been doing that a lot since the Harlan thing fizzled, talking about upgrading before we got too old to enjoy it, meaning she wanted something with granite counters and a 3-car garage in Westlake, so she could tell the new book club women she summered in the wine country instead of the Rust Belt Lake. I poured myself a cup and said, casual as asking about the weather, Tom Halverson needs us to sign some papers this morning. Refinance thing on the cabin. Rates are low. She didn't even look up. Whatever you think, Danny. Just don't lock us into another 30 years. I'm not paying that place off until I'm 90. I almost smiled into my coffee. Tom's office smelled like rye bread again. He had the documents fanned out on the conference table, like a deck of cards, only I knew how to read. Quitclaim deed, charitable remainder unit rust amendment, irrevocable transfer of real property. All of it written in 12-point Times New Roman that somehow felt heavier than any textbook I'd ever carried. Catherine flipped through the pages, hunting for the bottom line the way she hunted for sale prices at Macy's. She signed where the little yellow arrows told her to, Catherine M. Boone, Catherine M. Boone, Catherine M. Boone. Never once asked what transfer to Brothers Keeper Trust actually meant. She thought it was a tax shelter, something rich people did to dodge estate taxes. I let her. When she finished, she clicked the pen closed and handed it back to Tom. Tell me we're saving at least $20,000 a year doing this. Tom glanced at me. I gave him the smallest nod. More than that, he said. She beamed. See? Told you my husband was smarter than he looks. I signed last. Daniel J. Boone. My hand didn't shake. The cabin had been mine alone since Uncle Vito's estate settled. Catherine never noticed her name wasn't on the original deed either. 1 stroke of the pen and 400 feet of Lake Erie shoreline, 28 years of memories, and $340,000 of appreciated real estate left my life forever. Tom notarized it, stamped it, slid everything into a manila envelope addressed to the Ashtabula, county recorder. Catherine was already halfway out the door, talking about lunch at the Mexican place on State Route 534. I lingered. Tom waited until her voice faded down the hallway. You sure, Mr. Boone? I've never been sure of anything, Tom. He exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath for a year. Then it's done. The trust owns the cabin free and clear. Income from the short-term rental will fund 2 full scholarships a year starting 2016. I nodded. Put a plaque on the dock, I said, for firefighter Thomas D'Angelo and firefighter Marcus Washington, so every kid who jumps off it knows whose backs they're standing on. Tom's eyes got glassy. Already ordered. I shook his hand and walked out to the spring air, feeling lighter than I had since 1983. That summer, Catherine planned our usual 2 weeks at the lake like nothing had changed. She packed the cooler with Pinot Grigio and those little cheese squares she likes. I let her. We pulled into the gravel drive on July 10th. A new sign stood where the old mailbox used to be. Brothers Keeper Retreat, by reservation only. Catherine stared at it. What the hell is this? A woman in a navy polo shirt came out of the cabin with a clipboard. Mid-30s, ponytail, kind eyes. "Hi, you must be the Boones. Tom Halverson said you might stop by to see the upgrades." Catherine's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Upgrades?" The woman, her name was Amanda, I'd learn later, smiled like she was greeting royalty. "The trust spent the winter renovating new septic, new dock, commercial kitchen so we can host grief camps for the kids. You want the tour?" Catherine turned to me. "Danny, what is she talking about?" I got out of the car slow, breathed in the pine and the lake smell one last time, like a man visiting his own grave. "It's not ours anymore, Kath," I said quietly. "I gave it away." She laughed, sharp and nervous. "Stop it." "I signed the deed in April. It belongs to the scholarship kids now. Firefighters, orphans, police, widows' kids. They get to use it for free. The rest of the year it rents out and pays tuition." Her face went the color of the ashes in the fire pit. "You gave away my uncle's cabin." "Our cabin," I corrected. "And I didn't give it away. I gave it forward." She started yelling then, about betrayal, about memories, about how I'd stolen her inheritance, about how I'd done it behind her back like a coward. Amanda took a polite step backward toward the porch. I let Catherine scream until her voice cracked. Then I said, "You signed the papers yourself. You just didn't read them." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. For the first time in 31 years of marriage, she looked afraid of me. We drove home in silence. 4 hours on the turnpike with the radio off and the windows up. She cried for the first hour, cursed for the second, bargained for the third, and stared out the passenger window like a stranger for the fourth. When we pulled into the driveway on Redfern Drive, she finally spoke. "You're going to put it back." "No. I'll get a lawyer." "You'll lose. I'll tell the kids you lost your mind." "They'll believe you," I said. "That's fine." She slammed the car door so hard the Accord rocked. That night I slept in the guest room. First time ever. The mattress sagged in the middle and the sheets smelled like mothballs, but I slept deeper than I had in years. 2 weeks later, Catherine started telling people I was going through something. Early onset dementia, maybe. Stress from teaching too long. She needed support. Prayers, casseroles. The story took root fast. People nodded sympathetically when they saw me at the grocery store. Poor Catherine carrying the load while Dan unravels. I let them talk, because every night I logged into the Trust's portal and watched the reservation calendar fill up. Grief Camp, July 20th to 27. Widow's Retreat, August 3rd to 10. First Generation College Weekend, September. And every deposit that hit the account was another brick in a wall my family would never be able to climb. The cabin still stands. I drive past it sometimes on purpose. Kids run down the dock and cannonball into the water, laughing so loud you can hear it from the road. Their mothers sit on the porch drinking lemonade and looking less broken than the year before. I never go in, don't need to. It's doing what it was always meant to do, only now for the right people. Catherine hasn't been back since that day in 2014. She tells people the new owners kicked us out, close enough. And every time she says it, I think about the sound of her pen scratching across the quitclaim. Deed, Catherine M. Boone, Catherine M. Boone, Catherine M. Boone, signing away the only thing she ever really loved without even knowing it. Some lessons write themselves. It didn't happen with shouting or slammed doors. That would have been cleaner. It happened the way rust eats a car, slow, quiet, from the inside out, until one day the whole frame collapses and nobody can remember when it started. The first lesson Catherine taught the kids was comparison. Christmas 2010. Nathan was home from Ohio State for break, 23, wearing a new North Face jacket his girlfriend's father bought him. Lauren was 19, sophomore at Miami. Hair highlighted the color of expensive honey. We were opening presents under a tree that leaned slightly because the stand was older than both of them. Nathan unwrapped the wool socks I'd bought at Kohl's with a 30% off coupon. He held them up, laughed the way young men do when they're performing for an audience. "Classic dad gift," he said. "Practical. Catherine smiled from the couch, wineglass in hand. Your father's always been practical. That's why we drive a 12-year-old Accord and vacation in the same cabin every summer while everyone else goes to Hilton Head. Lauren giggled. Dad, you could have been a principal by now, or at least department chair with a parking spot. I was slicing the honey-baked ham in the kitchen. I heard every word. I kept slicing. That was the first time I understood the story was already written in their heads. Dad, safe, small, stuck. Mom, the one who deserved more. I could have corrected them, could have opened the brokerage statement that showed $1.8 million, quietly growing while they were busy judging the Sox. Instead, I carried the ham to the table and said, Parking spot's overrated. I like the walk. They laughed again, softer this time, the way you laugh at an old dog that still thinks he can catch the squirrel. After that, it became the rhythm. Every accomplishment of mine got translated into evidence of failure. When I was named Teacher of the Year for Parma City Schools in 2012, Catherine threw a little party in the backyard. Neighbors came. Ray from the physics department gave a speech. Nathan flew in from Columbus for the weekend. At the picnic table, Catherine leaned over to Lauren and said, loud enough for half the yard to hear, It's sweet, isn't it? They finally recognized him. Only took 30 years. Lauren posted a picture of the little acrylic plaque on Instagram with the caption, Proud of my dad for winning this something. Better late than never, I guess. Dish teacher life. I saw it at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. I liked the photo anyway. The kids started finishing her sentences for her. Thanksgiving 2016. Nathan was 29, engaged to a girl whose father owned car dealerships. Conversation turned to retirement, the way it does when you're almost 30 and suddenly aware your parents are mortal. Catherine sighed theatrically. We'll be okay. I mean, teachers' pensions are nice. We won't starve. We just won't travel. Nathan jumped in like a well-trained understudy. Dad, you could have gone admin. 6 figures easy. You just never wanted it. I was carving the turkey. Juices ran pink near the bone. I said, Some people measure wealth in dollars. Some in days they don't dread going to work. I got the better deal. Lauren rolled her eyes so hard I heard it. Catherine smiled the small, satisfied smile of a teacher whose students just aced the quiz she wrote. By 2019, the contempt was casual, the way you leave dishes in the sink because you know someone else will wash them eventually. Lauren moved to Charlotte after college, got a marketing job, started dating a tech bro who wore Patagonia vests in August. She came home for the 4th of July and sat on the deck scrolling Zillow. Mom, look at this house in Westlake. 6 beds, theater room, pool. Same price as what you guys paid for this place in the 90s, adjusted for inflation. Catherine sighed again, heavier this time. If your father had ever taken a risk? Lauren nodded along, already bored with the script, but reciting it anyway. I was flipping burgers 10 feet away. I said, Risk is when you bet money you need on money you don't have. I never saw the point. They both looked at me like I'd spoken Latin. Nathan got married in 2021. Big wedding at a country club in Columbus. Ice sculptures. Open bar. Catherine wore a mother-of-the-groom dress that cost more than my first car. At the reception, the best man gave a toast about how Nathan had broken the cycle of his upbringing, how he'd chosen ambition over comfort. I stood at the bar, sipping club soda, and watched my son raise his glass to that. He didn't look at me while he drank. I smiled and lifted my glass back. Catherine leaned over later, tipsy on champagne and righteousness. He didn't mean it the way it sounded. I said, he meant every word. She didn't argue. The final exam came Christmas Eve 2023. Nathan and his wife were staying with us. Lauren flew in from Charlotte with her new boyfriend, some influencer who filmed everything for content. After the kids went to bed, Catherine and I sat by the tree drinking the last of the eggnog. She was quiet a long time. Then, I talked to an attorney today. I waited. She said Ohio's equitable distribution. We split everything 50-50. House, retirement, savings. I nodded. Sounds fair. She searched my face for sarcasm and didn't find any. You're really not angry. Anger's a young man's luxury, I said. I'm 63. I'm tired. That seemed to satisfy her. She patted my knee like I was a dog that had finally learned to stay. Later, when the house was dark and the presents sat wrapped under the tree like evidence, I stood in the garage and opened the safe I'd installed behind the water heater in 2016. Inside, printed statements from the Brothers Keeper Trust. Current balance, $512 million and change. 49 kids fully funded through graduation so far. Another 31 in the pipeline. I ran my thumb across the top page. The paper felt warm like skin. Catherine thought she was coming for half of a teacher's pension and a house with a leaky basement. She had no idea I'd spent 15 years teaching her children exactly what she wanted them to believe. Their father was a cautious, unambitious man who would leave them nothing but memories and modest comfort. And I had let them learn that lesson perfectly, because the opposite of love isn't hate. Sometimes it's indifference so complete it looks like generosity. I closed the safe, spun the dial, and went to bed. In 2 years, she would hand me divorce papers over birthday cake. In 2 years, they would all stand in that VFW hall and discover the final grade on the test they'd been taking their whole lives. But that Christmas Eve, I slept like a man who knows the house is already paid for, just not the one they were planning to sell out from under me. It started with tennis lessons. Catherine was 61, newly retired from the library, and suddenly had 8 extra hours a day to fill with something other than resentment. She joined the Ridgewood Country Club in March 2022 because the Women's League keeps me active. I signed the check for the initiation fee, $8,400, without comment free. The monthly dues came out of the joint account like clockwork. I never asked why the pro shop charges went from 0 to 4 figures in 90 days. The pro's name was Evan Moreau, 34. French-Canadian mother, Midwestern polite smile, forearms that looked carved out of boat oars. He wore white from collar to ankle and smelled like eucalyptus, and whatever cologne costs $200 an ounce. I met him once, accidentally, in June of that year. I'd driven over to drop off Catherine's forgotten visor, found them on the far court, supposedly working on her second serve. He was standing behind her, chest to her back, hand over hers on the grip, murmuring something that made her laugh the way she used to laugh at Kent State when she thought no one was watching. I stood at the chain-link fence for a full minute. Evan knew I was there first. He met my eyes over her shoulder and didn't flinch. Catherine turned, startled, then recovered with the bright, brittle smile she saved for parent-teacher nights. "Danny, what are you doing here?" Like I was the one trespassing. "Just bringing your visor?" I held up the visor. "Thing?" Evan stepped away, smooth as water. "Mr. Boone, pleasure. Kathy's backhand is lethal these days." He called her Kathy. Nobody had called her Kathy since college. I nodded, handed her the visor, and left. Didn't say a word on the drive home. Didn't need to. Some pictures develop in the dark, all on their own. After that, the signs were neon. New lingerie in the laundry basket. Tags still on from Victoria's Secret. A second phone she kept in the lining of her purse. Burner from Walmart, paid cash. Hotel charges on the credit card masked as golf outings or spa days. I never opened the statements anymore. I just paid them and printed copies for the file in the garage safe. She started disappearing on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 till 3. Came home flushed, hair wet from the club showers, singing old Sheryl Crow songs off key. I'd be in the kitchen making tuna salad, and she'd kiss my cheek like a teenager sneaking in past curfew. The smell of eucalyptus clung to her skin like guilt. One Thursday in October 2022, I drove to the club unannounced again, sat in the parking lot with the engine off, and watched Evan's white Jeep Wrangler pull in at 9:58 a.m. Catherine's CRV was already there, tucked in the far corner under the maple trees. At 2:47 p.m., they came out together. He opened her door, hand low on her back. She laughed at something he said, touched his chest, then drove off separately like good married people do. I followed her home at a distance. She never looked in the rearview mirror once. That night she told me she was thinking about taking private lessons twice a week. Evan says I could play competitively if I really commit. I said, "Sounds expensive." She shrugged. "Some things are worth it." I almost laughed out loud. Instead I said, "Do what makes you happy, Kath." She searched my face for sarcasm and found none. That unsettled her more than anger would have. The affair lasted 3 years, give or take. Longer than Harlan, more expensive. Louder in every way except the only way that mattered. I never confronted her. I document, instead. Screenshots of the second phone bills. I cloned to an app I paid $9.99 a month for. Hotel receipts she threw in the kitchen trash, thinking I'd never dig past the coffee grounds. A single AirPod I found under the passenger seat of her car with a voice memo still on it. Evan's voice, low and laughing, saying, "Tell him you're at Pilates, babe. I've got court 9 reserved till 4. I saved everything in the safe next to the trust statements. Labeled the folder, "Evidence, do not need." By 2024, she was talking about my 65th birthday like it was a finish line. "We should do something big, Danny. You only turn 65 once." Meaning, you only get to cash out once. She started dropping hints about moving south after I retired. Naples, Charleston, somewhere with palm trees and people who didn't know we'd driven the same dented Accord for 15 years. She booked the VFW Hall in January 2025. Told everyone it was a surprise. Paid the deposit herself from the joint account. I saw the contract on the counter and said nothing. Evan started getting careless. Texted her during family dinners, once while Nathan and his wife were visiting. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen island. "Can't wait to taste you again." She snatched it, face red, claimed it was Denise from book club. Nathan smirked into his beer. I buttered another dinner roll and asked if anyone wanted more gravy. In July 2025, 4 months before the party, I came closest to breaking. Catherine was in the shower. Her phone lit up on the nightstand with a notification. I picked it up. No passcode. She still used Lauren's birthday. The message preview was a photo. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I set the phone down exactly where it had been and walked out to the garage. I sat on the workbench in the dark and stared at the safe. For the first time in 17 years, I felt something hot behind my eyes. Not sadness. Rage so pure it tasted metallic. I almost opened the safe right then. Almost printed every statement, every receipt, every scholarship thank you letter, and laid it on the kitchen table like a royal flush. But I didn't, because I wanted them all in the same room when it happened. I wanted the lights and cake and 80 witnesses who thought they were there to celebrate a quiet little man finally being put out to pasture. So I closed the garage door, went back inside, and kissed Catherine on the forehead when she came out in her robe, hair turbaned in a towel. "Love you," I said. She looked surprised. "Love you too, Danny." She believed me. 3 more months. I could wait 3 more months. The night before the party, she stayed late at the club for a women's doubles mixer that ran long. I sat on the back deck with a glass of bourbon I didn't drink and watched the stars come out one by one. My phone buzzed. Text from Tom Halverson. "Everything is updated. Current trust value 5 for frequent mowers. 58 graduates so far. 41 in school now. You still good for tomorrow?" I typed back, "Never better." He sent a thumbs-up emoji. I deleted the thread and went to bed. I slept 4 hours, dreamed of nothing, and woke up the morning of October 26th, 2025, ready to bury the people I'd loved most in the only graveyard they'd ever earned, the truth they'd built themselves. The week before, the party felt like the quiet before a nor'easter. Everything too still, the air too heavy, the gulls flying inland. Monday, Catherine left the house at 9:12 a.m., carrying the big leather planner she only uses when she's orchestrating something big. She kissed me on the cheek and said, Don't forget to pick up your blazer from the cleaners. You'll want to look nice Saturday. I told her I wouldn't forget. She believed me. I spent the morning coffee on the back deck watching the maple drop its last red leaves, like it was bleeding out slow. My phone buzzed. Tom Halvorsen. Final trust valuation came in overnight. $5.58 million liquid after the new endowments. Want the one-page summary for tomorrow? I typed back, bring 2 copies. One for me, one for the show. Tuesday, Nathan flew in from Columbus. I picked him up at Cleveland Hopkins because Catherine claimed she had catering details. He looked older than 38, hair thinning at the temples, the soft belly of a man who closes deals over steak. In the car, he talked the whole way home about his new Tesla Model Y and how the lease payment was basically free after tax credits. Then he said, "Mom says you're finally retiring. About time, huh?" I said, "Been time for a while." He laughed like I'd agreed with him. When we pulled into the driveway, Catherine met us at the door with tears in her eyes and her arms wide open like a game show hostess again. "My baby boy," she crooned, hugging Nathan so hard his carry-on bumped the siding. She didn't look at me in the eye once. Wednesday, Lauren arrived on a 6:45 p.m. flight from Charlotte. Catherine and Nathan drove to get her. I stayed home and mowed the lawn one last time before winter. They came back loud and laughing, Lauren in oversized sunglasses even though the sun had set, trailing perfume and the faint smell of airport Chardonnay. She hugged me quick, air kiss near my ear. "Happy almost birthday, Dad. Big day coming." Her smile was perfect, practiced, the one she uses for brand collabs. That night, the 3 of them sat at the kitchen island, with Catherine's planner, open like a battle map. Guest list, menu, playlist. They thought I was watching a documentary in the den. I stood in the hallway shadows and listened. Catherine, "We'll do the cake at 8 sharp. Then I'll give the speech. Hand him the envelope. Boom. Clean." Nathan, "You sure he has no idea?" Catherine laughed, low and confident. "Daniel still thinks I'm planning a surprise party with ice cream cake from Handel's. He has no clue what's actually coming." Lauren, "God, it's kinda perfect. Poetic justice or whatever." Catherine, "He'll sign. He always signs. He just wants it over." They clinked wine glasses like it was New Year's Eve. I went back to the den and turned the volume up on the television so they wouldn't hear me breathing. Thursday, Catherine cried at breakfast. Not loud, just enough tears to make her mascara run in delicate gray rivers. She sat across from me, clutching a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Teacher," a gift from a student in 2005, and said, "I'm so emotional about Saturday. 42 years, Danny. Can you believe it?" I reached over and covered her hand with mine. She flinched, just barely, then let me hold it. Her fingers were ice cold. That afternoon she left for final errands. I drove to the VFW hall. The manager, Tony, let me in the side door. I walked the room alone, folding chairs in neat rows. Stage at the front. I stood where the head table would be and pictured 80 faces watching me open that manila envelope. I said out loud, to no one, "Showtime." Friday. The rehearsal dinner that wasn't called a rehearsal dinner. Catherine invited Ray and his wife, a couple of neighbors, Ruth Ann from the English department, backyard fire pit, chili, cornbread, pumpkin beer. Everyone kept saying, "Big day tomorrow, Dan." Catherine circulated with a tray of appetizers and tears in her eyes every time someone mentioned retirement. Nathan and Lauren flanked her like bodyguards. At one point, Ruth Ann pulled me aside by the garage. "You okay, Boone? You're quieter than usual." I smiled the small, tired smile I'd perfected. "Just taking it all in, Ruthie. Last party in this house, maybe." She hugged me hard. "You deserve good things, Daniel." I hugged her back and didn't tell her I'd already received them. Later, when the fire burned low and the guests drifted home, Catherine stood at the sink, rinsing dishes and humming. She looked happy. Really happy. Like a woman who'd finally reached the last page of a very long book she hated. Nathan and Lauren were on the deck smoking weed they thought I didn't know about. I heard Lauren say, "Tomorrow he's gonna look like such a loser in front of everyone." It's honestly kind of cruel, but necessary. Nathan laughed. Mom deserves to be free. I closed the sliding door so the cold wouldn't get in. That night I lay in bed beside Catherine and listened to her breathe the deep, even breaths of the victorious. I stared at the ceiling and counted down from 100 until I fell asleep at 3. Saturday morning, the day of the party, I woke at 5:47 a.m. The house was still dark. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the trust portal on my tablet one last time. Current balance, 5,183,262. Scholarships awarded to date, 62. In the memo line of the latest deposit, in memory of firefighter Thomas D'Angelo, class of 2030 hopeful. I closed the tablet, rinsed my mug, and went to get dressed. Catherine was already up, humming again, curling her hair in the bathroom mirror. She caught my eye in the reflection. "Nervous about your big night?" I buttoned my good shirt, the one without the frayed collar. "Not even a little," I said. She smiled like she'd won already. At 6:02 p.m., we would walk into that VFW hall together, for the last time as husband and wife. At 8:07 p.m., she would hand me the envelope. At 8:12 p.m., the rest of their lives would change forever. But that Friday night, the night before everything, I slept like a man who'd already attended his own funeral and found the eulogy flattering. October 26th, 2025, 8:07 p.m., VFW Post, 1974, Parma, Ohio. The hall smelled like sheet cake, coffee, and the particular kind of hope that only exists when people think they're watching a happy ending. 80 chairs scraped, 80 faces smiled. 100 colored balloons bobbed against the drop ceiling like they were trying to escape. I stood at the head table in the same navy blazer, sleeves still a little short. Catherine had just finished her speech. Beautiful, really. 42 years of putting up with a stubborn, quiet man who never quite, literally, never left the classroom. She used the word freedom 3 times. Each time the word landed, Nathan and Lauren nodded like proud children watching Mom ace the talent portion. She reached into her little red clutch and pulled out the manila envelope. The room went church quiet. "Daniel James Boone," she said, voice trembling with rehearsed emotion, "you have worked so hard for so long. Tonight, on your 65th birthday, I want to give you the one thing you truly deserve. Freedom." She handed it over like a diploma. I took it. Felt the weight of 14 pages and 30 years of contempt inside. People leaned forward. Someone whispered, "Is this a prank?" Another voice, "Maybe it's cruise tickets." I opened the envelope slow enough for every phone camera to focus, slid the papers out, held them up so that overhead fluorescence lit the cover page. Petition for dissolution of marriage, State of Ohio. A collective inhale sharp enough to suck the balloons down a foot. Catherine kept smiling, tears shining. Nathan actually clapped once before he caught himself. Lauren's mouth made a perfect little O of delight. I let the silence stretch until it hurt. Then I smiled, not the tired teacher smile they were used to. The real one, the one I'd saved for this exact second. "Thank you, Kathy," I said, voice steady, carrying to the back row without a microphone. "This is perfect timing." I pulled the Mont Blanc from my pocket, the one engraved for Lives You Lit, and clicked it once. The sound cracked like a starter pistol. Catherine's smile flickered. "Danny!" I signed the last page with a slow, deliberate stroke. Daniel J. Boone, October 26th, 2025. The ink bled just enough to look like it meant it. I handed the papers back. Gasps. A fork clattered somewhere. Catherine took them automatically, confused now. People were supposed to be crying for her, not staring at me like I'd grown wings. I turned to the room. "Folks, I know this is unusual, but since Kathy went to all this trouble to make tonight memorable, I'd like to return the favor." I reached into my inside pocket and pulled out the single sheet Tom had overnighted. Brothers Keeper Charitable Remainder Unit Rust. Summary as of 10/25/2025. I held it up. "Most of you think you know my story. Public school teacher, 38 years in the classroom, drove the same car too long, never made principal, never bought the big house, never gave my family the life they deserved. I looked at Catherine, then Nathan, then Lauren. They were frozen. 10 years ago, I decided to fix that mistake. Only I fixed it differently than you imagined. I unfolded the page. On March 14th, 2015, I transferred every asset that wasn't this house, or my pension, into an irrevocable charitable trust. Lake cabin, gone. Brokerage account, gone. Life insurance, gone. Everything. Total value at the time, $4.7 million. Current value as of yesterday, $5,583,000 and change. The room made a noise I've never heard a human throat make before. Half scream, half animal. Nathan stood up so fast his chair fell over backward. Lauren's phone slipped from her hand and clattered under the table. I kept going. The Brothers Keeper Trust funds college for children of fallen first responders in northern Ohio. 62 graduates so far. 41 currently enrolled. Every penny. Locked forever. Even I can't touch it now. Catherine found her voice. You're lying. I looked at Tom Halverson standing quietly by the dessert table in the suit he wore to his own mother's funeral. He gave a small nod and held up a thick folder like a process server. Tom's got copies for anyone who wants to fact-check, I said. Or you can call the Ashtabula County Recorder about the cabin, or the scholarship kids who live there rent-free in what used to be our lake house. A woman in the third row, Maria D'Angelo, started crying. Not sad tears, proud tears. Nathan's face had gone the color of printer paper. $5.5 million. You gave away $5.5 million? No, son, I said gently. I gave it forward. There's a difference. Lauren was shaking her head, like if she shook hard enough the words would fall out of her ears. This is insane. You're insane. Catherine took one step toward me. Papers clutched to her chest like a shield. You did this behind my back? Behind everyone's back, I said. Turns out silence is cheaper than therapy. Someone in the back actually laughed. Couldn't help it. I turned back to the room. So here's the new math, folks. Kathy gets half the house equity, about $55,000 after the mortgage, half the checking account, $4,000 and change, and the 2020 CRV. That's it. Everything else is already gone. Permanently. Catherine's knees buckled. Nathan caught her elbow. I didn't move to help. I looked at my children. Nathan, you once told me I never built anything that lasted. Lauren, you said I chose comfort over greatness. Congratulations. You were both right. I never built anything for you. I folded the trust summary and slipped it back in my pocket. I built it for the kids who watched their dads run into burning buildings and never come out. Turns out greatness was just listening to the right students. The room was crying now, not for Catherine, for the story they thought they knew. Catherine found her voice again, raw. You bastard. You absolute bastard. I nodded. 42 years, I said, and you never once asked where the overtime money went. You just assumed I didn't make any. I stepped off the little riser. Now, if you'll excuse me, there's chocolate custard cake from Becker's, and I've been told it's excellent. I walked straight to the cake table, picked up the knife, cut the first piece neat and steady. Maria D'Angelo was first in line, eyes shining. Mr. Boone. Tommy would have... She couldn't finish. I handed her the plate. Behind me I heard Nathan say, Dad, wait. I didn't turn around. I cut the second piece for Mrs. Washington, Marcus's mom. Third for the widow of a Cleveland cop killed in 2019. By the time I reached the 10th piece, Catherine was gone, stormed out the side door, Nathan and Lauren trailing, like scolded children. The party didn't end. It transformed. People lined up to shake my hand, hug me, tell me their own kids were applying to the trust next year. Somebody started a conga line. Somebody else put Sweet Caroline on the sound system, and the whole room sang. I ate my cake standing up, leaning against the wall, watching balloons brush the ceiling like they'd decided to stay. Tom Halvorsen found me near the coffee urn, handed me an envelope of my own. "Updated will," he said quietly. "Everything else goes to the trust when you're gone, too. Signed it this morning." I took it. "Thank you, Tom." He smiled the way a student smiles when the teacher finally says the answer out loud. "You were always my favorite, Mr. Boone." I laughed, for the first time in years. Outside, the October wind scraped the parking lot, carrying red leaves across the asphalt like confetti from a different party. Inside, 80 people ate cake and told stories about the quiet teacher who turned out to be the loudest man any of us had ever met. And somewhere in the cold night, Catherine, Nathan, and Lauren drove home to a house that suddenly felt too big, too empty, and worth a lot less than they'd planned. I stayed until the last chair was stacked. Then I walked out into the dark, carrying nothing but a styrofoam box with one piece of cake and the lightest heart I'd owned since 1903. The first 48 hours after the party felt like the morning after a bomb goes off. Everything's still standing, but the air itself is wrong. Catherine didn't come home that night. Nathan texted at 2:14 a.m. "Mom's at our hotel. She's hysterical." "What the hell did you do?" I typed back. I did exactly what she asked for. "Freedom." He didn't reply. Sunday morning, I woke in an empty house that smelled like burnt coffee and leftover cake. I made eggs, ate them standing at the sink, then packed one suitcase and one banker's box. Clothes, books, the brass apple from the class of '99. The rest could rot for all I cared. By noon, I was signing a 6-month lease on a 1-bedroom apartment above a bakery on Ridge Road. $875 a month. Smells like cinnamon at 5 a.m. Close enough to walk to the high school if I ever want to visit my old classroom. Catherine showed up Monday with Nathan, Lauren, and a divorce attorney who looked 12. They sat at my new Formica kitchen table like they were attending a funeral. The attorney, Martin something, slid papers across. "We're contesting the trust. Undue influence, breach of fiduciary duty, fraudulent conveyance." I slid Tom Halvorsen's card back across. "Call him. He's expecting you." Martin called from the hallway. Came back 10 minutes later, looking like he'd aged 5 years. Hung up, whispered something to Catherine. Catherine started crying again, but quieter now, the dangerous kind of quiet. Martin cleared his throat. "Mr. Halvorsen informs me the trust has been audited annually by the Ohio Attorney General's Charitable Division. Every transfer documented. Separate property, ironclad." Catherine looked at me like I was a stranger wearing her husband's face. "How long have you hated me?" I thought about it. "I never hated you, Kath. I just stopped loving the version of me you needed to feel tall." Lauren made a sound like a kicked cat. Nathan stared at the floor. They left with the same papers they came with, only now the ink felt heavier. Tuesday, the story hit Cleveland.com. Retired Parma teacher reveals secret multi-million-dollar charity at own birthday divorce ambush. By Wednesday, it was on the Channel 5 News at 6. By Friday, someone started a GoFundMe for the Brothers Keeper Trust, and it hit $87,000 in donated matching money before they shut it down because the trust doesn't need it. My phone rang off the hook. Reporters, podcasters, old students wanting to say thank you. I let it go to voicemail and listened to the voicemails at night, like bedtime stories. Catherine filed an emergency motion anyway. Judge threw it out in 15 minutes. Petitioner signed every document presented to her. The order read, "Court finds no fraud, only regret." She got the house, the CRV, and 59 Tabimois 400 after closing costs. Moved into a 2-bedroom rental in Westlake with beige carpet and a view of the turnpike. Evan the tennis pro ghosted her the day the news broke. Apparently millionaires are sexy. Broke divorcees with baggage are not. Nathan lost his job in December. Company downsizing, but the LinkedIn comments didn't help. Son of the guy who gave away millions while his mom got nothing. Karma much? He moved back in with Catherine for 6 weeks. Slept on an air mattress in the dining room. Lauren's brand deals dried up overnight. Sponsors don't love influencers whose biggest viral moment is crying in the background of their father's public execution of their mother. Her follower count dropped 40%. She deleted the apology video 3 times before leaving it up. I didn't rub it in. I didn't have to. The ashes settled into 3 distinct piles. Catherine's she took a part-time job at Macy's cosmetics counter. Wears the same red dress to work now, only it doesn't fit the same. Some nights she drives past the old house, sold to a young teacher couple who planted tulips where her roses used to be, and sits at the curb until the porch light comes on. Nathan's, he started therapy. Real therapy, not the Instagram kind. Told the counselor he'd spent 38 years trying not to become me, and woke up one day to discover he already had, only without the part that mattered. He sends me texts sometimes at 3 a.m. I was a piece of shit. I'm sorry. I read them. Don't answer. Let him sit with it. Lauren's, she moved back to Cleveland in March, got a job teaching spin classes at the YMCA, started posting videos with no filters, talking about privilege and shame and growing. Up believing love had a price tag. Her new followers are half what they used to be, but they stay. My ashes were different. They were warm. Letters started arriving within a week, handwritten, some on notebook paper, wedding stationery, construction paper with crayon borders. Mr. Boone, my dad was Cleveland firefighter. Luis Rivera, ladder 22. He died when I was 9. Because of you, I'm finishing nursing school next May. I wish you could have met him. He would have loved you. Mr. Boone, my mom still keeps Dad's helmet on the mantle. I just got accepted to John Carroll on your scholarship. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. Thank you for giving me a father I never got to have. Mr. Boone, I'm 17. My dad was Parma PD. I want to be a teacher like you when I grow up. Is that okay? I read them on the tiny balcony of the bakery apartment, coffee going cold in my hand, lake effect snow swirling up Ridge Road like confetti. One Sunday in April, Maria D'Angelo showed up unannounced, with a lasagna and a bottle of Chianti. We ate on paper plates because I hadn't bought real ones yet. She told me Tommy's little brother Anthony was graduating pre-med in May, top 10% of his class. Tommy would have been so proud, she said, crying into her wine. I cried too. First time in years. Summer came. The trust bought a second cabin, this one in Hocking Hills. More kids, more dock jumps, more futures that won't end because a parent didn't come home from a shift. I turned 66 in October 2026. No party. Just coffee on the balcony and a new letter in the mailbox every day. Catherine filed for bankruptcy in July. Nathan started community college at Tri-C, taking night classes to become an EMT. Lauren teaches spin at 6 a.m. and volunteers reading to kids at the library on Saturdays. None of them have called. Not once. Some nights I sit on the balcony and wonder if the silence hurts. Then I open the next letter and remember what noise actually sounds like when it matters. The ashes are still settling, but the fire's out, and for the first time in my life, I'm not cold. I turned 67 on a Wednesday that smelled like wood smoke and the first real cold. The bakery downstairs had started putting out pumpkin spice everything, and the smell drifted up through my floorboards at 4:30 every morning like a friendly ghost. I no longer counted the letters. They just came, steady as lake waves. Some days 1, some days 7. I kept them in a cedar box the Trust kids made for me in shop class. Hand-carved lid, brass hinges, the words, "Thank you." Mr. Boone burned into the top with a wood-burning iron. On the morning of my birthday, I woke to find a small envelope slid under my apartment door. No stamp. Hand-delivered. Inside was a single photograph and a note in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. The picture, Nathan and Lauren, arms around each other, standing on the new dock at the Hocking Hills cabin. Behind them, a dozen, teenagers in Brothers Keeper t-shirts were mid-jump into the water, frozen in the air like they'd never come down. The note, in Lauren's careful cursive, "Dad, we know you don't owe us anything. We just wanted you to see this anyway. Anthony D'Angelo took the photo. He says to tell you the water's still cold enough to hurt your teeth, just the way you like it. We're volunteering this weekend, cleaning cabins, splitting wood, whatever they need. If you ever want company on the balcony, we'll bring coffee. No strings, no apologies big enough, just coffee. Love, Lauren, and Nathan. I sat on the balcony with that photograph in my lap until the sun came up all the way. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday when the maple on Ridge Road had finally let go of every leaf, the knock came. I opened the door. Nathan and Lauren stood in the hallway holding a Becker's Bakery box and 2 large coffees. Nathan looked different. Hair cut short, shoulders broader, the kind of tired that comes from honest work instead of corporate deadlines. He wore a Parma Fire Department t-shirt, probationary patch still crisp on the sleeve. Lauren had let her hair go natural, no more expensive honey highlights. She carried herself smaller, like someone who'd learned the world didn't revolve around her after all. Neither of them spoke first. I stepped aside. They came in, set the box on the little table, handed me a coffee, black, 2 sugars, the way I'd drunk it since 1983. We sat. The silence stretched, but it wasn't the old poisonous kind. It was the kind that happens when people have run out of lies. Nathan spoke first, voice rough. I finished Fire Academy last month, top of my probationary class. I'm stationed at Engine 22 now, same house Tommy D'Angelo worked out of. He swallowed hard. I ride in the seat he used to ride in. They still keep his locker empty. I think about him every shift. Lauren's turn. I closed my Instagram, started teaching at the Y full time. I'm saving for my own little studio. No loans this time. Slow. Real. She looked at me straight on. I was cruel, Dad. We both were. Not just that night. For years. We thought love was something you earned by being impressive. You tried to teach us it was something you gave even when nobody clapped. We weren't listening. Nathan again. I'm not here to ask for money, or forgiveness, or anything you don't want to give. I just needed you to know I finally understand why you did it. And I'm proud to be your son, even if I don't deserve to say that yet. Lauren reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope, slid it across the table. Inside, a check for $2,400 made out to the Brothers Keeper Trust. Memo line, from the first 6 months of honest paychecks. We'll keep adding, she said quietly, every month, until we're square, however long that takes. I looked at the check, then at them. My children, older now than I was when I started, this whole quiet war. I stood up, walked to the cedar box, opened it, pulled out 2 letters from the very bottom, yellowed, edges soft. I handed one to each of them. Nathan opened his first. Mr. Boone, my name is Malik Washington. My dad was firefighter, Marcus Washington. Because of you, I'm starting medical school at Case Western next fall. I want to be a trauma surgeon. I want to be the guy who brings somebody else's dad home alive out of the fire. Thank you for giving me the chance to try. Malik Lauren's letter shook in her hand as she read, Mr. Boone, my mom says you knew my dad, Tommy D'Angelo. I never got to meet him, but I'm graduating high school this year with a 4.2 and a full ride to Ohio State because of you. I'm going to study education. I want to teach history the way you did. I want kids to feel like the past is still breathing. Thank you for keeping my dad's story alive. Anthony D'Angelo, they both cried. Quiet, grown-up tears that didn't need an audience. I let them. When the coffee was gone and the bakery box held nothing but crumbs, Nathan stood, hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged me, awkward at first, then fierce. Lauren followed. She whispered against my shoulder, Happy birthday, Dad. 2 years late. I hugged them back, felt the years fall off my bones like old snow. We didn't fix everything that morning. Some cracks you just learn to live with, like the ones in the cabin floorboards that never quite close no matter how many times you sand them. But when they left the door open behind them. And for the first time in decades, The house didn't feel empty when it was quiet. That night I added their photograph to the cedar box, the one of them on the dock with the flying kids, pinned it to the inside lid with a thumbtack. Then I wrote a new letter of my own, the first one I'd ever put in the box instead of receive. To whoever reads this last, if my children ever come looking for forgiveness, tell them they already have it. Tell them love isn't a debt you pay back. It's a fire you keep passing forward. And tell them their old man finally learned how to come in from the cold. Daniel J. Boone, October 2027. I sealed it, wrote Nathan and Lauren on the front, and set it on top of the stack. Outside, the maple had gone bare, but the bakery lights were warm, and somewhere down the street, a kid laughed loud enough to bounce off the bricks. I left the balcony door open a crack, let the night in, let the future breathe. Some stories don't end with revenge. Some stories end with a cedar box full of thank yous and 2 grown children who finally learned how to carry water instead of spilling it. I slept that night with the window cracked and the smell of cinnamon drifting up through the floorboards, dreaming of docks and cold lake water and kids who will never have to wonder whether their father's sacrifices were worth it. They already know the answer, and so, at long last, do I.